is Sunday, February 8th, 2026. It is 2:34 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name is Paviel Gallegos. I am your host. I thank you all for being here. I think reading is very important, and I try to establish that by sharing different chapters out of certain books that I'm reading at the moment in order to gain more knowledge. Because with that knowledge, of course, your children as well and their offspring receive that knowledge in order for our country to be a better place indeed. We are picking up in Beyond the River, Part 2, 1838. Make sure that you all read the description if you guys are confused for any reason. And we're going to go ahead and jump in. My dear children, I want you to know that I am wholly innocent of all things for which I stand indicated or indicted. Give yourselves no concern about that. I am an irons for no fault. I have neither sinned against God nor the laws of men. I hope to see you all soon and find you happy. Learn to be pleasant without being foolish. Learn to be serious without being malakity. Learn to be firm without being self-willed, and learn obedience without servility. And of course, I have a baby in the background, you all. I do these videos for that reason too, because I'm human like y'all. I have a life, and sometimes I got a crying baby in the background that I got to find other things for him to do in order to keep reading. But that's just so you guys can see that life is life, and it is what it is. And if you guys have listened to any of my other lives, the reality of it is that's just what it is. Sometimes you can't keep these babies hush, not even to save your life. So you got to give them candy, you give them whatever you give to them, but sometimes you can't stop them from whining because babies do what they want, and when they're 1 year old, they don't process anything else besides what they want to do, and that's it. So anyways, before I continue into As I Mark the Steamer Cleaving the Waters, and that is also not from J.B. Mahan, but J.C. Vaughn. I'm going to continue reading in just a moment. We shall continue. All right, so I'll go ahead and pick up in the middle. Learn to be pleasant without being foolish, he says. Learn to be serious without being malakity. Learn to be firm without being self-willed. Learn obedience without servility. Learn patience without stupidity. Learn to unlearn all your errors and finally cease to do evil. Learn to do well. Your ever-loving father, J.B. Mahan. Okay? That was written from a jail cell in Washington, Kentucky, October 1838. Okay? Now, as I marked the steamer cleaving the waters of the Ohio and watched the waves rolling in opposite courses until seemingly they kissed either shore in token of love, I felt as if the very voice of nature murmured forth its eloquent sympathy in defense of perpetual union. I hope this may be so, and that as long as these waves shall roll, that union may last. Firm of policy and interest, but firmer and more enduring yet, of principle and affection. If Mahan is doomed as a felon, a taint will be upon the escutcheon of Kentucky, which no time or change can efface. That was written by J.C. Vaughn, defense attorney for John Mahan. Closing arguments, November 1838. Hold still. We will return in less than 30 seconds. Hold still. All right, we are back. Chapter 14, waves break on either shore. On a blustery night in late February 1838, somewhere across the river from Ripley, the ice was breaking under the weight of an animal's body. Or was it the body of a human? The man standing on the banks of the Ohio side near the mouth of Red Oak Creek wasn't exactly sure what was causing the sounds he heard. His gun at his side, his ears primed to every discernible sound, his body wrapped in several coats to brace against the chill of the river winds. Chancey Shaw had roamed these banks nearly every night since the river froze on February 22nd, waiting, hoping, and listening for the sounds he was now hearing, the telltale sounds of the struggle of a slave escaping across the river. Slave catchers like Shaw knew that when the river froze, the temptation for slaves to cross the icy road, quote, road to freedom, was sometimes too great to resist. Like the buzzards crisscrossing the sky above the river, the man-hunters scouted the banks at night, watching the spots where skiffs had landed runaway slaves in the past, and waiting. Skilled in the treachery of slave catching, Shaw was confident that the patients would be rewarded up to $500 for a fugitive slave captured on the Ohio side. But on this night, the ice had begun to thaw. He knew the odds were slim that his waiting would earn him any reward. All the boys in the town had been down on the slow ice that very afternoon, knew that the ice was, bear with me, turning the page, was rotten, with air holes and cracks extending almost across the river. John Rankin Jr. wrote later of that night, "What slave would be desperate enough to try to cross on a night like this?" Still, the cracking and splashing echoed back and forth against the snow-encrusted hills of both shores, and the sounds grew louder. Then came the baying of the hounds, the voices of men in pursuit, the desperate crying out of women. This was it, Sean knew, the long-awaited catch. His pace quickened to nearly a run as he moved along the bank, tracking the sounds in an effort to target the exact place the slave might land. We will return in less than 30 seconds. Thank you for listening. We are back. Crossing the river from the other shore was a slave woman who belonged to a farmer a few miles south of Dover, Kentucky, on the river, just 5 or so miles from Ripley. She had fled upon learning that a slave dealer had been meeting with her master about the sale of his slaves, including her 2-year-old child. From that moment, freedom seemed as necessary as drawing breath. There was no going back. She knew 2 facts: that the river had been frozen for at least a week, and that a white man who lived on a hill back of Ripley was known to help fugitives. The next night, she left her home with her child and ran north through the woods to a place called Stony Point. There, an old white man took her into his cabin and fed her. She told the man of her plan to cross the river to freedom. No one, he told her, had been on the ice for the past few days, as far as he had been able to see. The river had thawed for at least the first 8 feet from the shore, and the strength of the ice in the middle was doubtful. Please hold. I apologize, you all. Sometimes I have to pause because I have a 1-year-old in the background and I have to tend to my child, but I make time to read to as well. So picking up there, an old white man took her into his cabin and fed her. She told the man of her plans across the river to freedom. No one, he told her, had been on the ice for the past few days, As far as he had been able to see, the river had thawed for at least the first 8 feet from the shore, and the strength of the ice in the middle was doubtful. If she did not drown, she would freeze to death, he warned, and her baby would die with her. She listened until the faint sound of dogs barking sent an all-knowing look between the two of them. Sensing that she was unstoppable, the man quickly wrapped her baby in a woolen shawl, rushed them outside, and tore a rail from his fence for her to use as support if she broke through the ice. Then, as the barking grew louder, he took the mother and child to a path that led to the river. She followed the path and plunged down the bank just as the dogs broke from the woods nearby. With panic as her only guide, she ignored what the old man had told her, stepped upon a patch of rotten ice several feet into the river, and quickly stumbled into the icy water, up to the tops of her ankle-high shoes. For seconds, the freezing water seemed to paralyze her resolve. Then she heard the voices of her pursuers, and the din of barking dogs grew louder and louder. Before her lay the freezing water and the darkness of the unknown, holding the rail in one hand and her child in the other. She moved forward in the shallow water until she hit upon the ice, which for several feet grew firmer as she walked. The dogs and the men were searching the banks for her, still unaware that she was daring them to cross the river. She moved quickly and silently. Then the ice broke through with a loud popping sound, the sound that Shaw undoubtedly heard. So did the men behind her. As she fell into the now deep waters, she threw the child onto the ice head and used the rail for support. Working her way to the firm ice again, she found her baby still partially wrapped in the blanket, which was now wet with soft slush of melting ice. She scrambled to her feet again and pushed forward. Running across the ice still ahead of her pursuers, she sensed the other side was near, but it never seemed to come. A third time she fell and, saved by the rail, climbed back out. So cold and exhausted was she now that she let go of the rail that 3 times had saved her. She was only feet from the shore. When she came upon the land, she collapsed onto the frozen ground, and just as she was beginning to stand again, a hand emerged from the darkness and seized her arm. With her child clinging to her, she sank helplessly to the ground, a feeling of defeat washing over her as if drowning in the anxiety of her entire race. Courage gone, with fear seeping through her like the water saturating her clothes, she lay on the ground and groaned in despair. As if responding, the child cried, and at the moment the hand released her, and a voice out of the darkness said, "Any woman who crossed that river carrying her baby has won her freedom." After hours of patrolling the Ohio shore, hunting for runaways in the discomforting chill of the winter, Shaw had found his catch. Arrested for assault at least twice, and known to drink too much too often. Shaw was not given to expressions of kindness and compassion, but this night he showed another side. He forsook the master's goal that awaited him. He helped the woman to her feet, picked up the baby, threw the wet, cold shawl upon the ground, and took the woman by the hand. Rushing through the streets and alleys of Ripley, she watched for shadows, worrying he might collide with one of them. He knew so well the men with whom he swapped stories of coon hunting on both sides of the river, listening for sounds in a way he had never done before. He took her to the edge of the village, to the bottom of the steep hill, and then pointed up, telling her that the man who lived at the top of the hill would help her. The doors to the red brick house would be unlocked, he told her, and the man's dogs were trained not to bark at niggers. No nigger was ever caught that got to his house, Shaw told her. It was late in the night when she arrived at the Rankin home. Turning pages. The door was unlocked, as Shaw had said, and a fire was in the hearth. Within minutes, she was poking the fire as she watched Jean Rankin sorting through a pile of clothes in search of flannel underwear she had made herself, a plaid dress that was her own, a pair of home-knit socks. John Rankin entered the room, called 2 of his boys downstairs, and then commenced to listen to the woman's story of crossing the ice. John Rankin Jr. later recalled the night, and he said the following. "I was aroused by father calling up the stairs for Calvin and myself. I had answered that night call too many times not to know what it meant. Fugitive slaves were downstairs. Ahead of us was a long walk across the hills in the dead of the night under a cold winter sky, followed by the long, cold walk back home, which must be made before daybreak. So we were in no pleasant mood when we came downstairs. Seated before the fire was a mulatto woman with her baby in her arms and a pile of wet woman's clothes on the hearthstones. Father, who was standing on one side of the fireplace, said to us, "She's crossed the river on the ice." One of us exclaimed, "She couldn't." "But she did," he continued. There was mother, father, Calvin, and myself, looking down at the woman and her baby as she sat in the glowing light of the fire. She seemed so simple, and yet how little did we know that this courageous mother, who though now unknown, was to stir the hearts of a nation. While she was safe enough for the moment, as a matter of fact, danger was imminent as long as she remained with us. So when the mother and baby were warm, well fed, and somewhat rested, we prepared to resume the flight to Canada. Long before daylight, she must be hidden safely away farther back from the river. As Calvin was older, it fell to his lot to carry the baby while the mother and I fell in behind. Our trail led over the hills way down the bank of Red Oak Creek, which we waded and then came to the unlocked door of Reverend James Gilliland, the Scotch Presbyterian minister of Red Oak Chapel, which still stands. Likewise, the manse into which we now entered without knocking. The lights, fire, and food were there waiting. Here we turned over our fugitives. That we acted wisely and cautiously, guiding our charges across the hills, was forcibly brought to our minds before we reached home. For as we were crossing a bridge on our way back, one of the white patrols stepped out from a deep shadow and spoke to us. We knew the man very well and knew what he was about. When we asked what he was doing out so late, he characteristically answered, "Just coon hunting." At home, we found father and mother both up. Father was deeply wrought over the affair, exclaiming, "I hope she gets away. Hope she gets away." The woman and her child spent the following day sequestered in the Gilliland home. That night, one of his sons took her to the home of Dr. Greenleaf Norton in Decatur. From there, she was taken to a Quaker home near Sardinia, and then to confuse and avert her pursuers, who were still hunting her down, she was guided all the way to the home of the Quaker conductor, Levy Coffin, in Newport, Indiana, 6 miles west of the Ohio border. Eventually, she and her child would arrive in Chatham, Ontario, and one day she would have returned to Rankin's home on a quest to bring the rest of her family out of Kentucky. A year or so later, as John Rankin Jr. recounted, his father was visiting one of his brothers who was a student at Lane. One Sunday afternoon, father called upon Professor Stowe. There, in the presence of Harriet Beecher Stowe, father told of the flight of the slave mother and her child crossing the Ohio River on the ice. She was greatly moved by the narrative, exclaiming from time to time, "Terrible! How terrible!" So moved was Stowe that she would later use the slave woman's story to model the character Eliza in her book, Uncle Tom's Cabin. So far as we were concerned, it was only another incident of many of a similar character. Strange how this unknown fugitive mother figured into the history of this country. She had no name, no monument erected to her. We two boys had helped to make history and were deaf, dumb, and blind to its magnificence. So we have finished that chapter, you all, and hopefully the next time when we meet again soon, hopefully we'll be into or past chapter 15, because of course, often enough I read and I'm not on live, of course. I have, of course, more reading sessions solo than I have ever had live reading sessions, but I appreciate you all sitting in to listen. I appreciate you all gaining the knowledge of things that you may not know. Remember that I don't do any fiction here or nonfiction. No fantasies, none of those things. Real life, real deal, history repeating itself at the moment. So I appreciate you all being here. Thank you. If you haven't yet subscribed, please take the time to do it. It's free to do. And when you guys get the chance, visit my website, the cncmovement.org. Sign up to be a member if you want for the yearly basis. Your donation helps towards, not only do you become a member and you receive one of our pamphlets for special members, but also your donation helps to go towards our milk program here in Ravenna, Ohio until we expand. Thank you all for participating by listening and having your ears wide open. You all have a beautiful and blessed day, and talk to you all soon. We shall meet again.